Imagine a city of 3 million people and a deliberate plan to make every single one of them starve to death. This is the Siege of Leningrad, 872 days of hunger, cold, and bombardment, the longest and deadliest siege in modern history. More than 1 million people would die. But this is also a story of impossible survival. How did a road built on a frozen lake save 1 million lives? Why did a starving orchestra perform a symphony aimed straight at the enemy? And how did one schoolgirl's tiny notebook become the most haunting record of the entire war? Stay with me, because by the end, you'll understand how a city simply refused to die. It begins in the summer of 1941. On the 22nd of June, Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, and 3 German army groups smash into the Soviet Union. In the north, Army Group North drives like a spear, advancing 500 miles through Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia in a matter of weeks. Its target, Leningrad. For Hitler, this is no ordinary city. It is the birthplace of the Russian Revolution, the home of the Soviet Baltic Fleet, and the city that carries Lenin's name. He is so certain of victory that he reportedly has invitations printed for a celebration at the city's Astoria Hotel. From the north, Finland joins the attack, pushing down the Karelian Isthmus to reclaim land lost in an earlier war. And on the 8th of September, German troops seize the town of Schlüsselburg, cutting the last road into the city. Leningrad is surrounded. Trapped inside the ring are nearly 3 million civilians, along with the soldiers defending the front. And now Hitler gives an order unlike any other. He will not storm the city. An assault would cost too many men, and he has no wish to feed its people. Instead, he will seal it off, shell it, and starve it out of existence. Its surrender, his command states, is not even to be accepted. That same week, German bombers strike the Badayev warehouses, and much of the city's food reserve burns into the autumn sky. Survivors would later dig up the very earth where the melted sugar had soaked into the ground. As winter closes in, the rations are cut and cut again. By the 20th of November, a factory worker is allowed just 250 grams of bread a day. Everyone else, office workers, the elderly, and children, only 125. A slice the size of a deck of cards, and it is barely bread at all, bulked out with sawdust and cellulose. Then comes the cold, one of the harshest winters on record, falling to 40 degrees below zero. There is no heat, no electricity, no running water. People melt snow to drink, haul buckets from holes cut in the frozen Neva, and burn their furniture, their floorboards, even their cherished books, just to live one more night. And then they begin to die, in their tens of thousands. In January and February of 1942 alone, as many as 100,000 people perish every single month. The dead lie in stairwells and snowdrifts. The living, too weak to dig, pull their loved ones through the streets on children's sleds. At the Piskaryovskoye cemetery alone, around 500,000 victims would be buried. Hunger drives some to the unthinkable. The police record around 2,000 arrests for cannibalism. In one freezing apartment, an 11-year-old girl named Tanya Savicheva records the deaths of her family in a small notebook, one by one. Her final entries read, "The Savichevs are dead. Everyone is dead. Only Tanya is left." Evacuated too late, Tanya herself would not survive the war. Through all of it, one sound never stops. Over the city's loudspeakers, Leningrad radio broadcasts the steady tick of a metronome, a heartbeat to tell the people and the enemy that the city is still alive. But Leningrad will not surrender. When Lake Ladoga freezes solid, the Soviets do something extraordinary. They build a road across the ice itself. They call it the Road of Life. Through blizzards and under constant shell fire, convoys of trucks crawl across the frozen lake, hauling flour in and carrying the starving out. The ice gives way. Hundreds of trucks vanish into the black water with their drivers. But the lifeline holds, and across the siege, it would evacuate well over 1 million people and keep the city barely fed. And inside the ring, the city fights on. The front line is only a few miles from the factory gates, yet the workers, now mostly women and teenagers, keep building and repairing tanks and turning out shells for the guns. Bombs and artillery rain down for more than 2 years, some 150,000 shells over the course of the siege. On the walls, stenciled signs warn citizens, during shelling, this side of the street is the most dangerous. Inside the Great Hermitage Museum, the staff race to crate and hide its treasures, leaving the empty gold frames hanging on the walls, a silent promise that the art would one day return. And then comes the most extraordinary act of defiance of all. In August 1942, in a half-starved concert hall, the conductor, Karl Eliasberg, gathers the survivors of the city's radio orchestra to perform Shostakovich's 7th Symphony, the Leningrad. 3 of his musicians had already collapsed and died during rehearsals. To shield the concert, Soviet artillery launches Operation Squall, pounding the German batteries into silence. And as the orchestra plays, the music is broadcast by loudspeaker out across no man's land, straight at the German trenches, so the enemy would know, beyond all doubt, that Leningrad still lived. For more than a year, the siege grinds on. And then, at last, the tide begins to turn. In January 1943, the Red Army launches Operation Spark, smashing a narrow corridor through the German ring just south of the lake. They call it the Corridor of Death, but down it, in just 17 days, the Soviets lay a railway, and for the first time, real supplies pour into the city. And then, in January 1944, the final blow. A massive Soviet offensive shatters the German lines around Leningrad and hurls them back mile after mile. On the 27th of January, after 872 days, the siege is declared over. That night, more than 300 guns fire a thunderous victory salute over the Neva, and a battered, starving, triumphant city pours into the streets to watch the sky blaze with light. The cost was almost beyond counting. More than 1 million of Leningrad's people had died, the overwhelming majority of them from hunger. The victory banquet Hitler had planned was never held. His invitations to the Astoria Hotel were never used. Leningrad had endured the longest siege ever laid against a modern city, and it never fell. It remains to this day one of the greatest stories of human endurance the world has ever known. And now, you know how a city refused to die.